If I was starting a new design business today, there are a few very specific things that I would do in the first 6 months to make sure that my business becomes everything that I want. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be sharing a series of 6 videos that take you through everything from researching your competition, coming up with your design packages, and even diversifying your income as a design studio so everything works long term. Today, we're going to kick off by talking about creating your own brand. In other words, how would someone describe your business to a colleague or a friend, for example? The reason we want to keep this question at the forefront of our branding is because it helps us pose very specific questions that we can answer with a little bit of research. As we're putting together our marketing strategy, our website, our design packages, having the answer to this question will make everything 100 times easier. From working as a brand designer and running my own studio for 10 years now, I've noticed that clients tend to look for these specific characteristics when they pick a designer: style, experience in their industry, having a clear process that fits their own, and lastly, and maybe most importantly, personal fit. Every client and company is going to have slightly different preferences, so that's why we want to think about this in the beginning and make sure we really understand our ideal customers. But how do you actually do that? I'm a scientist at heart, so let's start by writing a hypothesis. Write out a sentence that describes what you want to offer in terms of services and who you think you want to help. Don't stress about making it perfect. We're going to go back to this and tweak it later on. For example, you might say, I want to offer brand strategy and visual identity design to tech startups. Perfect. So now we want to make sure that this is a service that is really needed and specifically by this group of people that we're thinking that we want to help. Overall, we want to answer these questions in the next 10 minutes. First, what are other studios in my area already offering? What is there already a lot of demand for? What will I personally enjoy doing the most? What is my personal unfair advantage? And finally, how can I describe what I offer? Let's start by doing a little snooping on your competitor websites. I like to start by looking at companies that are local to me. Even though it's completely possible to work with companies globally and fully remotely, I think it's always so much easier to start looking for companies that are in your local area. A lot of clients like to be able to meet face to face. Maybe you come by their office to have a coffee and talk about the project. So starting locally is a lot easier for a lot of businesses. So start by searching for your city name and a term that you want to be known for, like let's say brand designer in Edinburgh. Here we really want to have our pens and papers ready because we're going to be taking some notes from these websites. For each of these websites, we want to take a note of how they describe their services and also who they say that they want to help. Essentially how they approach that hypothesis that we wrote in the beginning. For example, this studio called Project Brand Design explicitly say that they work with schools, while Sarah Creates has a slightly different approach to their target audience, saying that they help minimalist brands. It can seem like a target client or a niche has to be a very specific industry, like a hairdresser or a lawyer, for example. But actually, when we're thinking about target audience, it's much more important to think about the problem that this specific company is trying to solve. A chain of hairdressers might have a lot more in common with a chain of gyms, for example, than with a completely new hairdresser setting up for the first time. Since these websites are already ranking high, it's likely a little bit difficult for you to compete on these exact type of services. Not saying it's impossible, but therefore we really want to see what our unique approach can be to the service or who we're helping. As you're looking around, try to really find some good examples of people who talk about the solution that they're providing, not just the services that they offer. For example, we can see that Project Brand Design focus on creating a brand that stands the test of time. Since their target audience is schools and places, we can probably guess that the process of creating a new brand is going to take a lot of effort for these organizations. So knowing that the brand they're investing in is going to stand the test of time is a really valuable pitch. Now let's find out if there's demand for the service that you've written down. We can head over to Google Trends and use the filters to pick your location. Try plugging in some words that you think your ideal customers would search for, like maybe it would be local design studio or branding services or brand packages, for example. Depending on how big your city is, you might have to tweak the filters a little to be for the past year rather than the past month, or even go up to your country rather than your specific city or even a region. If you scroll down a little bit here, you can also find related search terms. These can be a virtual goldmine of information of other things that people might search for, but that might not be as obvious, so there could be a bit less competition there. You can also see the little number next to the different terms that shows that it's trending. So how much it's gone up, for example, example, in the last 30 days or in the last year. If you find it a little bit difficult to know what to focus on, like maybe you love UI design and you love branding, knowing that you can search for these filters and actually find out what people are most interested in can be a great way to guide you. Besides knowing there's demand for these different services, we also need to make sure it's something we're truly excited about. Building a business does take a lot of time, and we need to make sure that it's something that we're seeing ourselves being able to be excited to keep learning about in the long term. It's completely normal, especially as a creative person, to love doing lots of different things and feeling really unsure what to focus on. I think it's really important to remember that just because you pick something now, it doesn't mean that you're ruling out every other project that someone asks you about or that you can never change it. Having a clear direction just makes it a lot easier for you to write copy for your website, to know how to promote yourself on social media. So it's more of a convenience thing for ourselves so that people more easily get to know us and what we can offer. Now that we know what services we want, let's go back to that ideal customer and try to answer these questions. First of all, does design give this type of client a big competitive advantage? So what I mean by this is, in some industries, they have great design. They might compete on packaging, on shelf space. They might be having very important social media campaigns where design is something that is really going to set them apart from competitors. But in some industries, they might just be using, let's say, sales calls to get people, or they have different conversations and relationships one-to-one with people, and what your brand and website looks like might not be as important. So for those clients that really depend on design, that's going to be a much easier sell for you because there's a direct line between what you're offering and a better business outcome for them. And then I also want you to think about at what stage of their business do you want to work with this type of client. So for example, if it's a startup, if they just got a Series B funding and they've got hundreds of employees and they've got these giant offices, in that case, they might want to work with a really big studio or a really big agency and not really want to gamble on a new studio. But if it's a small company that just has one person, for example, they might not have the budget. So maybe you're in the angel investment stage of the startup industry, for example. So with this more defined version of our target customer, let's have a think about what really matters to them. Why do they feel like they need design help? Why would they reach out to you? What frustrates them day to day? In a lot of cases of people I worked with, they felt very frustrated with their brand because it was difficult to use. Maybe they didn't feel proud of it, so it prevented them from actually creating social media campaigns or updating their website. Think about these different aspects and what might be the case for your type of services and your type of ideal customer. To get some more solid information and not just guesses, there's actually tons of ways to get words directly from ideal customers. The first one that I think lots of us actually overlook is to use social media to look for reviews, comments. It can be on your accounts or on competitor accounts. You can look at testimonials on other competitor websites, for example, and try to really pick out the words that people use to describe the things that they liked or disliked. Secondly, you can have a look at industry reports. So for example, Business Gateway in the UK actually collected and made a bunch of industry reports that you can download completely for free. There are also tons of paid options, so if you want to invest a little bit of money in your brand research, you can as well. We really want to focus on the emotional part of the problem and the solution here. So for example, if your clients are in an industry that is super saturated, then what you might want to do is create a brand for them that is going to be using humor and more personal experience. But how do we actually pitch this when we talk about our own personal brand? You might want to say something like, get a team that helps you compete with the giants by actually connecting with your customers. So it's all about realizing what our customers care about and then translating that into something that emotionally connects with them. The final piece to describing your own brand is to think about your unfair advantage. For example, you might be really good at managing people, and you can be that connection point that helps your client actually manage their website designer, their brand team, their marketing team, their brand strategist, for example. Or you might have an unfair advantage based on your previous career. So for example, I got my degree in sustainability and ecology before I became a brand designer. And that means that I can help sustainable companies that have a lot of complex information because I have a history in that industry. I think your unfair advantage is both based on things you're really good at, but also things you're really passionate about. Because the people who are super passionate about their job are going to keep researching how to get better, going to stay on top of all the newest tools because you're just excited to try them out anyway. And that is ultimately going to make you the best version of that career and that creative person. So with all this information, let's have a look back at your hypothesis. Are you happy keeping it as it is, or would you like to start making some tweaks to maybe specify your target audience or your services a little bit more? The next big task will be to convert this clear mission statement into a visual identity. You want to make sure that you're creating a bank of assets for your brand, like brand patterns, stock photography, custom illustrations, for example, that go beyond just the logo, colors, and fonts. I think it's also a really good idea to make sure that you have templates for everything you're going to be using day to day, like social media, your newsletter, and anything you're sending to a client, like proposals, for example. If you want to skip trying to figure out exactly what to put in all of these templates and design them yourself, I've actually put together a startup bundle with all the different templates and guides for someone who is starting their own design studio. I'll make sure to link that down in the description, and it's also in our store on the website. One of the first things you'll need to do when you create your visual identity is to pick your company name. There are a few different ways to go here. The first one is to use your own name, and this is great if you have quite a short or a very memorable name. It's especially a good idea if you feel like you want to keep your company as you and you want to have that really personal touch when you work with clients. If, however, you have a name that is very long, like I have a very long last name, for example, or if you have a name that can be difficult for people to pronounce, in that case, you might want to go for a studio name instead. This is also really good if you eventually want to bring on a team and you want to take it away from just being you. The name should be fairly short, easy to spell, easy to say, and it's also good if you're able to get very similar social media handles and a website address. There's a website called BrandSnag where you can search and they will tell you if it's free on these different platforms. It's not a perfect result every time, but it's a great place to start and you can go and double check yourself. When you're at it, I also highly suggest getting a custom email for your business. It just looks a lot more professional. It is a little bit of an investment. You don't have to do it, but in my experience, it makes you look a little bit more professional as a business. For creating your visual identity, I highly suggest you watch this playlist where we have tons and tons and hours of videos talking exactly about how to design a logo, a visual identity, and brand guides. You can also go back to those competitor websites to do a bit more visual research and see how they use design to get their messages across. I'm sure you have tons of thoughts and ideas swirling around your head right now, so I'm gonna say bye for today, but in the next video, we're gonna be talking about how to actually put together your packages for your different services and how to set up your design website. We're even gonna be talking about pricing your design services because I know that's a huge topic a lot of us have a lot of questions about. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Good luck with creating your own business, and I'll see you next time.